For the past 2 months, I have heard
nothing
but hype for this dang movie. It annoyed the absolute crap out of me because it was like a freaking virus. It just
spread everywhere.
First, it started invading my YouTube shorts. Then I heard it at school.
Then I see my 3-year-old sister playing a song from the movie. Once I heard it from my girlfriend, that was the straw that broke my back.
Seriously, the hype for it was everywhere and I could not escape it. So after a few months of non-stop K-pop music playing in my ear,
I hate K-pop, by the way,
I caved in and watched the freaking movie. Now that I've got my rant about the hype out of the way, here I am ready to share my critiques on the new Netflix film, K-pop Demon Hunters. By the way, this isn't going to have any spoilers because I low-key don't want to ruin it for y'all. So without further ado, let's get into it.
You take the battle, it's over, that I've lost my composure, cause I'm staring into space. And now my heart's beating fast, like a baby start a new chapter, I'll soon reveal the beast. There's a beast in my soul, and it wants to evolve, keep on pushing me so I can end it. Now the words leave your tongue, where did that power come from? Saying to do that things that you condemn to.
So, starting off with the animation, I absolutely loved the animation and cinematography for this film. You can tell love was poured into each frame. I do like that they tried to do a hybrid between anime and CGI, and honestly, they did it pretty well. Seriously, the fact that they managed to put so many anime-esque faces on these characters whilst also looking relatively good is kind of impressive in my opinion. Usually when anime and CGI try to go together, they usually switch back and forth between who's dominant. But honestly, it felt mostly even balanced. They must have taken notes from Dragon Ball FighterZ because this looks impressive. Not to mention, I love all the little details they put into each scene, each character, and just everything in general. I think the best part of it all is the choreography because the choreography is pretty good, and combine that with the cinematography, it's insanely good. Apologies if I butcher her name, but the choreographer for this movie, Lee Jung, did an amazing job on the choreography, and I think she needs a ton of credit for this. Overall, the animation for this movie was pretty solid. Next, we have the characters. The main cast was relatively enjoyable. I think my favorite character was Zoe. Why? Because she just radiated the
I like turtles
meme. Seriously, I think all I heard her talk about was turtles and relaxation. She was a goober, and that was fine with me. In fact, she kind of reminded me of Goku in a way, because she was serious when she needed to be, and goofy when she could be, without the two mixing too much. I feel like she was one of those characters who mixed both humor and seriousness perfectly in character without it making her look bipolar or just unnatural. The protagonist, Rumi, was a pretty solid character herself. Absolutely love her hair, by the way. It reminds me of Jinx from the League of Legends game. Unfortunately, there's not much I can say about her without going into spoiler territory, so we're just going to leave it at that. Then, we got Mira, who reminded me of Juri Han from Street Fighter. What I will say is, she was a pretty fun character. Now, I don't know if it was just me, but when I saw her weapon, my mind went straight to the Scenic Fights video on the Guando from Warframe. I know it's not the exact weapon, but her Gokdo, apologies if I butchered that, the Guando look pretty similar to me, and because of this, I just remembered the entire lecture given by this dude. I also loved Genu. He was a pretty lit character. Overall, each character was pretty solid. Finally, we have a plot line of the story. So, I think it was extremely well written. I think you can tell the writers were just having absolute fun with this movie. It's pretty hard to be detailed and review the plot without delving into spoilers, and I apologize for sounding short because usually my video essays are up to 15 minutes long, but this review is super hard because I can't spoil anything. Anyways, I think, apologies if I butcher these names, Maggie King, Danya Jimenez, and Hannah McMeechan did a phenomenal job with writing this film. I love the story, so yeah, spectacular job on the writing. We get into our bonus category, which is music. Now, I've already established at the beginning of the video that I don't like K-pop, and the truth is, it's not just K-pop I hate. I hate all modern day pop music, and while you can argue that K-pop doesn't really fall into that category, K-pop never really became a thing in the US until the 2010s with Gangnam Style by Psy. At least that's how I've experienced it anyway. The only K-pop song I genuinely like is Gangnam Style. Anything else is entirely ignored or disregarded. However, watching this film is sort of like my first time dipping my toes into the pool of K-pop, and honestly, I thought it was good. I especially loved all the Soulja Boy songs. Like, okay, if we're comparing the two pop groups, I'd say the Soulja Boys take the win because they're stupid catchy and their songs are genuinely good. I especially loved Your Idol, which I thought was the best song out of the entire movie. After watching the movie, I actually went out of my way to put that song on my Amazon playlist, which means Gangnam Style now has a buddy. In other words, the music was pretty solid, which ends our positivity here. Now, let's get into what I didn't like about the movie. So my main issue with the movie is character depth and focus. Specifically, a screen time issue. I feel like all of the focus was on Rumi, Mira, Zoe, and Genu. Everyone else was just there. I especially believe this with Rumi's guardian because while writing this script, I had to go out of my way to Google her name. That's literally how minor she was in the movie, even though she's Rumi's guardian. Her name was Celine, by the way. I especially think the rest of the Soulja Boy should have had more focus too, instead of being your basic, oh, I'm a demon, I'm pure evil. I feel like given their human appearance, which makes them stand out a bunch in front of the demons of this movie who look like ancient Asian demons from Asian religions, I feel like they could have had more depth than just one-off villains. However, this isn't entirely their fault, which leads into my next issue. So I think that the story went by way too quickly. I feel like with the plotline it has, it would thrive on a slower plotline than 1 hour, 35 minutes. In fact, I feel like the movie had way more time to work with than what was given, because I do not understand the 13 minutes and 55 seconds of nothing but credits. Now, if we don't count the credits, K-Pop Demon Hunters is only 1 hour and 22 minutes long. All of that time could have gone into making the movie put more focus on different things in the plot. Even then, I feel like this movie would have thrived on Akira's movie time, which was a full 2 hours without the credits, or even just a longer movie time in general. Now, these issues are really minor, but they bugged me a ton throughout the movie. So in certain scenes, there are times where you can see the frame rate of the character's animation suddenly go up a ton. I know I shouldn't be nitpicky with CGI animation, given CGI animators are often given stupidly hard deadlines because these companies want the movie out as quickly as humanly possible. However, it still distracted me because I would prefer if my animation had a consistent frame rate throughout the film. Even then, they should have had the scenes with different frame rates feel like it has the same frame rate as the other scenes, like with Akira. Then there were the anime expressions where there were just scenes that they were taking it way too far and were crossing the line. Sometimes the anime-esque faces they make really get in your face, like, oh hey, look, our 3D animation looks like anime. Isn't that great? Acknowledge our unique style! Look, they did good making it a hybrid, but they still had issues where they were being way too pushy with the anime faces. In fact, that leads into my third minor issue, which was that sometimes they were a bit too pushy on the humor. I love the humor, but some of the jokes were either too much or just flat out cliche. It's probably just a me problem given my humor makes absolutely no sense, but I felt like the humor was just too much at times. Overall, the movie had a few issues, and it wasn't perfect, but I can understand the hype. It's a pretty good movie, and it went past my expectations. So in real life, I do this thing where each rating has its own sentence. These ratings usually range from dog water to absolute cinema, with dog water being lower than 5 out of 10 and absolute cinema being the 10 out of 10 rating. With movies, I give these pretty solid rating. It's an 8 out of 10. However, these movies went past my expectations of an 8 out of 10 movie. It wasn't a perfect movie, but it beat my expectations. So I'm giving it a 9 out of 10. This movie was exceptionally good, and I cannot believe I'm saying that. I figured this movie was just going to be your basic kids movie, but this is what I want to see more of in kids entertainment. We need more movies like this where it's actually genuinely entertaining and not the ADHD fart joke filled movies we have now. Overall, I am amazed at how this film turned out, and I can see what all the hype is about. Anyways, thank you all for watching, and this is SSJ Raikou signing off. Peace!